The new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook Wild Game Recipes for the Grill, Smoker, Campfire, and Camp Stove is out on April 24th and is available for pre-order now. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Pre-order your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com.
Hey, this is Tyler Jones, and you're listening to The Element Podcast. Dead buck.
Dead buck.
Colorado buck.
Yep.
What's happening, all my woods people? Again, we are driving, and that's what we do this time of year. If you listen to the Big Buck Breakdown from this week of Bill Winke, you have an idea what I'm talking about. But Casey and I are in different vehicles right now, and this is really the first opportunity that we've had to recap what happened in Texas this past week. I mean, even in person, you haven't heard this story, really. I've kind of refrained from telling you, but at the same time, like, when we hunt together, man, there's a lot of things to do, but there's a pretty intense focus when we're not either podcasting, capturing footage, dropping footage, or cooking dinner. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's not a lot of time for hindsight or recalling past events, and just we have a lot of fun, but it's usually in the here and now.
Yeah, man. One thing I hope to get to one day when I get kind of old and tired, which, by the way, there was a guy that I talked to out in the yard today, you saw, who told me he's not retired, but he's tired. And I thought he loved telling them jokes like that.
Dude, that's pretty good. He reminded me of a hometown character we've got around the house.
Yeah.
You probably might, if you think real hard, you'll know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, just an old timer that loves his town and wants to tell jokes.
Yeah, that was about him. So anyway, When I get to that point, when I get to the old timer joke guy who's tired, I think one day I want to sit around, and hopefully they'll still allow a corn pile or a corn feeder of some sorts somewhere in the U.S. and I'll get me a deer camp and sit around, and you and I can tell stories and stuff like that and not be in such a hurry all the time.
You telling me that you aren't public lands for life, man? Come on.
I'm public lands for life. Just don't know if I always want to hunt whitetail deer on public lands. Sometimes it would be fun to take a trip where you kind of just talk, tell stories, and eat chips and salsa. You know what I mean?
That would be nice, man. That would be nice. I can see a day and time whenever we do that. But for now, because of our situations and our passions, we do a lot of that public land chase and stuff. And that's what you're going to tell us about today, right?
Yeah, that's right, man. So if you were a listener, you know that I drew a very hard to draw hunt in Texas, which I guess aren't they all? You know what I mean? There's not a whole lot of statistics as to what your odds are or anything like that, or how the system works exactly. Everybody just knows that, hey, I didn't draw again. You know what I mean? So that's not my case this year. I had a tag that I have made out to be this thing over the course of the last few months is something that is very cool, but it's kind of burdensome because of the fact that I drew Iowa this year as well. And looking back on it, I'm definitely probably an idiot for thinking it was burdensome, because it was a great experience. But I mean, there still is this looming, very expensive Iowa tag in my pocket. So there's that. It's to be rational. It all makes sense, But at the same time, man, I had a good time. I learned a lot, and I ended up taking my limit of deer, which was a buck, of certain proportions and a doe. And I don't know. I guess, the first one that I harvested was actually the doe. So, quickly I'll kind of tell that story. I know people aren't really probably interested too much in hearing about a doe, but this doe actually field dressed at 131 pounds, so she was sizable. So I'll go ahead and tell it because it's it was definitely a big source of meat to fill my freezer this year. But I had hunted a couple days, and it was just, you just kind of get thrown into the fire and you start trying to learn a particular piece of public land, and you got to figure it out quick. And then a couple days into this hunt, I see a cold front coming in the future via Weather Underground, and I decide that today is going to be about 72 degrees, and it's going to be a great day to cut up some meat. And I've got a doe working into me real slowly in an area that I had busted a buck out of the day before, but super thick, just bedding area. And what she was getting ready to do is bed, I'm pretty sure, because she was moving so slow. And I'm getting to the point where I can recognize it sometimes when I think a deer is about to bed, but I also sometimes a deer will bed in sight, and I'll go, man, why didn't I recognize that was about to happen? Because that deer stood there for like 5 minutes, So anyway, she's like just slowly working in. First time I see her, she's at like she's inside of 40 yards probably. It's super thick. She comes, finally works her way over, sniffs around on some persimmons, which were something that were key in this whole hunt. Was being around persimmons. They were pretty ripe, and most of the ones on the ground, there was nothing on the ground really. Like they were all in the tree still, if they were producing at all. So she sniffed around at them, couldn't reach anything that was on the tree, and then worked around to me. And man, I got some cool footage, and it was super bright. I was looking into the sun. And I had it perfect. I stopped her in the frame, had the slow motion going and everything. And she was 25 yards, and I just smoked her through both shoulders. She dropped to the ground. You could tell she had been hitting the shoulders, and then popped back up and ran out like 50 yards. I got back on her in time to see, with the camera, in time to see her backflip at like 50 yards away or whatever. And then when I didn't realize until like 20 minutes later when I went to review the footage that the last like minute and a half of that thing, when I had kind of reset the camera to a spot that I was going to shoot, I didn't record. So that's cool.
No.
Very rookie. But anyway, that was a good day, man. And I still got to, I still got to continue or finish the breakdown on that doe, but pretty excited to have that meat. And then, let's see, it got real cold, and I think you and I were talking one of the days, or the first day that it got really cold, I guess. The front moved in.
One day I had to talk you out of the truck.
Dude, that's the day.
Remember.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. It was raining. When I got ready to go outside, it was 28 degrees and raining, however that happens. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And I had a pretty good walk in the pitch black out to my stand, and I'm just like, and the wind was whipping, like 15, 20 miles an hour, and I'm just like, man, this is a miserable day. I do not want to go get in this tree stand. Not to mention, I had moved this tree. I had actually switched units and moved over. I had moved my tree stand to another area, and it was for a south wind. Well, we had, of course, a north blow in that night, so I knew I was going to have to move it again. So I'm thinking, I got to go in and move this stand in the rain. And when I got in there to move my stand, everything is iced. My stand, my steps, everything. So I carefully scramble up, grab everything, pull it down, and I just got to move this stand like 60 yards to give me the right wind on this particular travel area right here that I'm hunting. And I walk back like 40 yards, and there is a deep canal. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. This, slough full of water. Can't get across it. So I literally go hang my tree stand back in the same tree with no gloves and iced over, all of it's iced over, and climb back in my stand, and I'm just literally just huddled behind the tree on the leeward side the entire morning. And didn't see anything till 9:30. Everybody starts, saying everybody's like, ready to get down or whatever, and I'm that's on the hunt or whatever, and I'm ready to get down as well. I hadn't seen a single deer, and at 9:30 I saw a couple of does. So I stuck it out till about 10, and didn't end up seeing anything after that. Came in, and I ended up seeing a guy that was hunting near my area, and super nice guy. He was really helping me out with like information. It's like, man, I've been seeing bucks do this. He'd already tagged out and shot his buck, and was hunting does. And so he was like, man, I've been seeing bucks move over here from my stand. I could see pretty far back that direction. I've been seeing them move along this tree line. And so I was like, all right, well, cool. I appreciate it. I think I'm going to head back that way and scout a little bit and try to find a place. And so I kind of entered this area from a different angle and reset. This is the last evening of the hunt. I have one more morning after that hunt, or after the evening hunt. So this is like day 5 that I've been out. Been sleeping in the back of the truck, in the back seat. I've definitely roughed it and tried to earn it. And so I moved this stand around during the middle of the day, or I'm going to. And so I walked back to kind of the area he was talking about, and I couldn't really make it work with the wind and other factors to hunt the exact area that he was saying. But when I got in there, man, it was real thick, like where I'd shot my doe. And I was like, this is what bedding looks like as far as I know. This is where things bed, you know what I mean? And I could see, I ended up finding some beds, which, there's hogs and stuff in Texas. So it's like, well, I mean, who knows, what these beds are exactly. But I was finding beds. Things were really thick. And then there was a little bit of area where kind of a slough had been, I guess you could say, and it left us like a 60-yard diameter kind of lake bed almost that was dry that I could see really good out of or across. And so it's really quiet. So I take my time. I actually pushed in like probably almost 100 yards more than I ended up hanging, and because I was just trying to make good assumptions and scout it with as little pressure as possible, but still get a full effective scouting session in on the way in. And so I saw some good stuff, but I decided, you know what, back where I had just been, there was several trails that kind of came together. And if you look at the lay of the land, it just pushes everything into this general little kind of almost one of those lanes that you always talk about. You know what I mean?
The deer movement area.
Yes, like a deer movement area. It's hard to explain to people maybe from the Midwest that hunt trails and other things, but sometimes you just got to go, you know what? This is an area that deer move through, and I can see it, even though I have to look really hard. And so and there was a couple of trails there. It just kind of, as usual, you see a trail for 20 yards and then it peters out, So, anyway, set up my stuff real quiet, get up in my stand, got everything set up. And for the second time on this trip, I'm putting my clothes on, which is about my last step. I'm putting the rest of my clothes on. And I hear a deer snort. And I look up, and there's a shooter buck at like 80 yards running almost directly away from me. And I'm like, good grief. Like, this is the second time this has happened to me, where, right as soon as I start hunting, I see a buck looking right at me, essentially, So he takes off. That really gets me bummed. I know that it's like getting close to the rut. This is in early November. And so I know that there's a chance that buck was just cruising, ended up seeing me, and that there could be something else in the area. When we're hunting in Iowa and you spook a buck when you're hunting bedding in late October, you kind of worry that might be the only deer you see that night, which it wasn't. But anyway, back to this hunt. So I'm sitting there for a little bit longer. I get real still after that. Didn't sulk too hard, and anyway, I'm just kind of keeping an eye on things, turning around real slowly every once in a while, making sure there's nothing behind me, and I end up seeing a doe, and then pretty early, I turn around and I see something that looks, and I had seen a bunch of coyotes. I see something that looks just like a coyote standing at like 80 yards maybe. And so it looks like it's looking at me. So I grab my binos real slowly, pull them up, and it is a nice buck, shooter buck. And he's looking right at me. Not at me, but in my direction. He's not looking, at me necessarily, but kind of in my direction. And so I'm like, oh, snap, does he see me? I can't tell. Well, he starts moving like he's relaxed. And so I'm like, okay, whatever, we're good to go. Okay, so now it's time to start getting bow in hand, camera on, and grunt tube ready, and rangefinder ready, and that way, depending on what happens here, we can make this happen. So he starts moving. Like if I'm looking at him, he's moving left to right, and my wind is blowing to the right of the direction I'm looking. So he's moving towards my wind. So he's doing so pretty slowly, really. But I immediately reach down and grab a wild carrot. What are they called? The little sticks. Not sticks, but you know what I'm talking about. The
little scent wick thing.
Scent wick, yeah. So I grab one of those scent wicks and pull it out, and I rip it open, and I hang it on a branch right beside me. And I'm like, okay, pulling out all the stops here. This is my cover scent. If he goes and hits my wind at like 30 yards, maybe it gives me just enough time to get a shot or whatever. So he takes forever to come into bow range. At like 60 yards, from about 60 to about 35 yards, he eats persimmons and rubs on trees and just rakes bushes and just puts on a show for the camera for like 15 to 20 minutes. And the whole time my heart's just like at this elevated rate, I'm like, dude, please don't be another close call. I've already had so many of these this year. Please let this happen. Just be the real thing happening for me, And as he continues to work to the right, every step, I'm like, man, he's not coming to me. He's gonna end up getting my wind. Even if I grunt, he's gonna get my wind. So at about 50 yards, as he's heading to the right, I grunt, and he looks up, and he stands there for a little bit, and then he just looks back down, and he goes to just eating persimmons and raking trees some more. And so I was like, okay, well, he's heard me. So, I'm not going to do any more. I just hit him with one grunt. So I put it up, and I just wait. And like another, like 10 minutes after that, he finally works in. And he starts working towards me a little bit. And at like 35 yards, I feel like I'm about to get a shot at this deer. Even though he's in the thick stuff still, like he's going to come out before he gets my wind, I think, which he's only got about 5 more yards till he gets out where I can shoot him. And that's a good shot, 30 yards, whatever. And so he starts coming out at like 30 yards, and all of a sudden when he gets out, he just like breaks out and he just like starts walking. And I'm like, oh, this is happening. And so I've got to crank my lens back down, with both hands, but I got a bow in my hand, and it's just like self-filming, man. Honestly, we've had so many. We've had the cameras save so many bucks' lives already this year.
Oh yeah.
And when you're self-filming, I honestly, I enjoy the challenge, but it takes away a little bit from the fun of watching a deer come in and focusing and making a good shot sometimes.
And, oh yeah, 100%.
You know, so like it's just way more fun when you got somebody working the camera for you, so that you can just be in the hunt, you know, instead of thinking, oh, I got to get this framed up, you know. So anyway, he starts coming, and so I pull it out, and I'm trying to get it out in front of him a little bit. He's coming fast, and I put it on him. I put it out in front of him at about 15 yards, and I'm like, I'm going to grunt stop him and hit him right there. And I mean, he just blows through my frame before I could even get clipped on hardly. And so at that point, like, I think I reached back up to try to move it, and I was like, no, never mind. I'm just going to smoke this joker. And so, you know, I've got GoPro footage of me shooting, I imagine, at least if it was on me good. But you know, I don't have like the actual kill shot. But he comes down this trail and ends up, I've been saying 7 yards. I mean, it's 5 to 7 yards. It was super close. And he comes right down the trail, right past the tree I was sitting in. And at 7 yards, I had to grunt him twice to get him to stop, which kind of blew my mind. He never even heard me the first time. I hit him again. He stops, and I center the top pin and pull the trigger. And it hits just a little bit back of where I wanted it to. And it, frankly, looks a little bit back. More back than even where I you know, was kind of shooting or whatever, obviously, and so but where kind of more than I wanted it to be. And so he runs out there and like 100 yards or so and stops, and he like kind of shifts his weight, like I'm thinking, oh, he's about to tip over right there. And I mean, I still feel good, like I said, a little bag, but I still feel like it's lungs, you know. And then he keeps going. And he starts walking real slow and then just disappears. So I'm like, dadgummit. So I've seen a liver hit deer do that a couple of times. And so I'm like, yeah, maybe I hit so far back it's the liver, you know. So I pack all my stuff, text you and my wife, and, you know, let y'all know that I've shot a buck and everything. And then I text the biologists and the group and everybody and let them know I shot a buck as well. And super nice guys, willing to help and stuff. And anyway, I get down and I go to look for blood, and there was no blood for like probably 50 yards from the hit. I mean, there was blood. Yeah. There was good blood on the arrow. There was lots of hair, which was kind of weird. And then there was no blood whatsoever and I was walking down the daggum trail that he took out of there. I mean, there was one of two trails that were, 2 yards apart, kind of going on top of this berm. And, and I couldn't find blood in either one of them. I walked down there to see if I could see him, just like tipped over, walked down pretty far. It was being real quiet. And I just got to the point where I was like, man, if he's liver hit and I bump him in this thick stuff, I'm going to really struggle to find him. I just need to come back and find him in the morning, or not in the morning, but late night, because there was just so many coyotes around. I mean, they even sounded off while I was standing there. So I was like, I got to come back in a couple hours and just start looking for blood and looking for him or whatever. So I end up, right about that time, I found some more blood. I found some blood. And so I tracked it for like 10 yards. And he, and I'm looking up in there, and it's so quiet, dude. I can't even take a step without feeling like if he's up there within 40 yards, like he's going to jump out of his bed, And so I just decided, I was like, okay, I'm going to go put my stuff in the truck, and I'm going to come back in here in a couple hours. I'm going to eat dinner, come back in a couple hours, which dinner, I didn't even hardly have dinner at this point in the trip. I mean, it was like I was going to eat some pork skins and some lima beans, you know what I mean? And so I pack my stuff up. I take my stand down. I leave like my steps and like my bracket for my stand. Maybe that's about it. Maybe one more thing. Grab everything else. And I'm going to make a big loop around the persimmons that he had come in through, and just try to loop out away from where I kind of had last seen him. He didn't go into the persimmons when he left and got hit. He went out kind of at a 70 to 90 degree angle from there. So I would loop out around these persimmons, and I promise you, dude, I was like, man, it'd be cool if I could see him on the way out dead, And it wasn't 5 seconds later, I'm walking and I see something white at like 40 yards laying in the grass under the persimmons. And I'm like, there ain't no way this is real life. And, I pretty much knew at that point. And I pull the glasses up, and it's a belly. And I'm like, that sucker's deader than a doornail right there. He ran like 100 yards, he ran a loop back to the persimmons, basically.
Yeah.
And walked over there to him, and I got video, best I could, just as a lone cameraman and hunter, of me just walking up to him and finding him dead, and everything. And man, my first both my first public land deer in Texas in the same trip in a couple of days of each other, and my first buck on Texas public, and man, it's a cool feeling, dude. It's exciting, and I felt really accomplished and like I earned it because I did everything, the whole thing by myself, and it was day 5. It was the last evening. It was, or day 4, I guess, of the hunt. But I'd been there 5 days, sleeping in the back seat of a truck, eating out of a big old Rubbermaid thing full of food, and just kind of roughing it, man, and doing it the hard way. And like I said earlier, I don't intend to always have to do that. I hope that one day I can cook steaks out of the fridge in my deer camp and tell stories. Yeah. But I do know that I was able to pull it all off, man. And I don't know. It's a cool feeling, man. It's a cool feeling.
Yeah, for sure, man. I've told you a couple times already, but congrats on it, man. I know that, you and I were talking a lot throughout that hunt. You were struggling mentally some, and not that it was, it wasn't warranted. It's kind of a tough deal, especially after you just came off of Iowa, where we had a tough hunt and went there and kind of had to do the same thing. But it's cool to see the gratification that you got from putting it all together and actually, making it happen. And that was awesome. I was so stoked whenever you sent me that. I think you always downplay every time you send a text. It's like, yep, just shot a buck. And like, what? Dude, every time.
The work that ensued after that moment of shooting him was so much. Like, I've kind of explained to you a little bit about some of the things that happened that night, and everything after that. Yeah. But like, so much to do, and so I barely felt like I had time to even text y'all. It was getting dark, and I wanted to get my stuff out and get back in there and grab him before it got dark, just because for the sake of ease, being able to ratchet him up to the cart and pull him out, which was a beat down in that CRP grass and everything, and just, with hog wallers and stuff around and everything. It was a tough deal. So like, I didn't mean to downplay it. But I was just like trying to be super quick and still let y'all know that like success had been had,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad I'm on the short list either way, even if it's a short text. So it's cool, man.
Yeah.
So a couple things from this hunt that I've seen in you that is, I'm not going to say untypical, but just I just feel like you're changing a little bit. Maybe it's a situational thing or whatever, but you made a bunch of pretty aggressive moves in this hunt. Moving, like, you even moved areas. Like, I had to go talk to the biologist and get to move areas and stuff, which was like, after you've learned a place, like a spot, it's pretty hard to want to go somewhere else. And you thought it was necessary, even after you were seeing bucks and stuff too, Yeah. So was there events on this trip that made you feel that way? Or were you kind of recalling things from this season earlier or past seasons, or like why do you feel like you got so aggressive on stuff?
I kind of, with all the tags that I have this year, I had decided I was going to be pretty aggressive this year.
Yeah,
because I just wanted to try to max. I didn't want to, like, if I can kill a deer on day 2 and go home and see my family, then this year I want to do that, because I'm going to be out hunting another deer in a week or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, in the past and in the future, if I have 2 tags, or I guess, 2 or 3 buck tags, from Texas and Kansas or whatever it might be, it's different, like I want that to last. I don't necessarily want to go on a hunt that ends on day 2 because, and if it does, I want to stay there for a few more days and cook for everybody or whatever, or whatever the situation is, however I can help on the hunt or whatever. But, and just enjoy that success or whatever and still be on kind of that mini vacation. But, I think just having so many tags was kind of a big, my overall mentality in this season is to be aggressive, whether that's calling or moving stands or whatever it is. And I mean, I pulled I pulled stands and moved them and set them back up almost every single evening and morning of the hunt. And we do that. We did that in Iowa, and I'm a dadgum professional stand hanger right now. I have no qualms about saying that, right? Like I can whip a dadgum, at least my tree stand, up into the tree pretty dang quick and efficient. And that's just because I've done it so many times already this year. And so, but like as far as like on the hunt goes, and continuing on with the aggression and my hunting, and we were getting to, like every night we would all come together and just kind of chat in the campground, even the guys that weren't staying in the campground. And a lot of us would kind of chat in the campground. And I don't want this to sound like egotistical at all, but there was some guys there that I could tell didn't quite have as much experience hunting as I did probably, that were seeing like bucks, a lot of bucks. And like these are dudes that didn't know which direction the wind was blowing, and when I walk up to them to talk to them about their hunt, they smelled like zest, or Irish Spring, like they smelled good, and they don't know which way the wind's blowing. They're just going out and hunting a particular area that looks good. And at that point, I'm like, well, I'm not saying I'm a better hunter necessarily, but I'm definitely trying hard, and I'm not seeing, and I'm not blowing my wind into areas that are bad, but and I ended up every night just understanding that I was seeing less bucks than these other people a lot of times, less deer in general. Dude, most of the hunts I saw, I think for the first several days I averaged 2 to 3 deer per sit, and some of these guys are seeing 20 a sit. You know what I mean? So like, I understand that like there may be a good area that's better necessarily, but like I'm hunting several hundred acres in my area there, and moving stands and stuff and not seeing deer, and I can see a long ways where I was, and so which I kind of chose it that way purposefully, and so I just that was a big part of me deciding like, hey, you know what? I think that there may be a better area for me to kind of drop into and find deer. And I had seen a shooter almost every sit, whether he was 600 yards away or, I bumped him from his bed. That's a different story, but, I just decided that I was going to move. And I told the biologist, I said, man, I hate to be that guy that like doesn't like his unit, and so he wants to switch. It just sounds like such a whiny thing to do, and not stick it out and be committed. But I'm glad I did at this point, and who knows what I would have shot where I was at. And I don't think that it was bad necessarily. I just think at that particular time during the rut that there weren't bucks moving through there. And who knows, a day later it could have changed. When I moved, there could have been 3 bucks cruise through there and start chasing does.
Yeah.
So it's just an aggressive move that I wanted to make, man.
Yeah. Well, we talked about actually, I think this morning how you can make a ton of right moves, but if the deer don't cooperate, then it doesn't really matter. What moves you make, that are right or wrong or whatever.
Right.
But do you think that choosing that original unit was a wrong move, or do you think it's just it was just kind of a luck of the draw kind of thing, just the deer weren't there?
Yeah, I think it was a luck of the draw kind of thing. There's plenty of habitat there, and I don't know what day it was. So the day before I shot my doe, I had moved into this area in an afternoon where I ended up shooting that doe. I move in, and I kind of, it's hot, dude. I'm working my way in to this place pretty far in, and I didn't like the first spot I went to, so I moved on down into this area where two timber lines kind of met together, and I'm looking at this cottonwood, and I'm like, man, that's probably the one I need to sit in on this wind. There's persimmons right here underneath it. Like, it's a good place to sit. And then I look over like 40 yards, and there's another cottonwood, and I'm like, ooh, that one looks better. It's got a little more brush. It's a little bit straighter, and I think I can shoot a little bit to a few more different areas out of it. And so I take like 10 steps towards that cottonwood just to see if I'm just going to go over there and see if it looks better from that position. And take 10 steps, and within 20 yards of that cottonwood is a big old shooter buck, big tall shooter buck, and he busts out of there like a dadgum, like he was scalded, man, and just took off and made like a grunt sound that sounded like he was real hacked, that on a 75-degree day he had to get up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and just like with no regard to the brush, just completely went through it. Didn't care where the trail was or anything, just like through the brush like it was nothing. And then he was gone. And that kind of, on a day that's hot, when you're that close to bedding to a buck's bed and then you end up busting him, you really feel like you're not going to see anything, and I really didn't. I think I saw like 2 does. But you know, it's kind of, that's that mental struggle that you talked about earlier with like that I was kind of going through, is like stuff like that was happening to me. But I guess to get back to your original question, like there were bucks there, and I shot a doe there. There were some does and stuff too. I just think that for some reason, and maybe it was because of the heat and it being a more open unit, that maybe just that direct sunlight is something that they didn't want that time, that during those days of the heat, while they're trying to run and, you know, find does and stuff. So
yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's
no.
I think there was definitely you know, better places at the time, but not necessarily that's a bad place for sure.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
So let's get back to the buck that you did shoot. I remember one of the first things we talked about is that there was hardly any blood, and then I didn't hear from you for like 3 hours, so that was fun. But you know, you switched over to shooting the heavy arrows, fixed blade stuff this season.
Yep.
The day 6 stuff with the fixed blades, and I'm a believer in the stuff, you know, in fixed blade broadheads and stuff, especially after some of my previous experiences. I know, but you were kind of a little bit hesitant to do it. And then whenever you text me and said there's no blood, I was like, oh no, like it's the one, like the knock that fixed blades have, right? Like this is the thing where it's like, yeah, they're gonna penetrate, they're gonna tear some stuff up, but there's a chance that it's not a great shot. But we did a little necropsy there after we met back up, and it kind of was, I don't know, there was just some details where it just seemed like maybe it was just a different situation. What's your final thoughts on like your blood trail and the shot placement and all that kind of stuff?
Well, this is by no means comprehensive or anything, but like the doe died so quick, which I smoked her pretty good, but she died very quickly. If it was a little bit thicker in the direction she ran, I might not have been able to see her. But I guess what I'm getting to is that she died within sight. And so what I did was I pulled out and went the opposite direction back to my truck, got in my truck and drove around to another area where I could access a little bit easier, because to get into where I got it, where I shot her from my truck, I was having to go through like all kinds of this buckbrush and just persimmon thickets and nasty stuff, you know what I mean? And so but from the other direction, it was pretty open. And so I drove around to that direction and brought my cart in from that direction, and I didn't have to blood track or anything. I pretty much had her pretty close marked, found her pretty easy out in the open, and barely got her on the game cart by myself, and took her out, which I actually, probably a big reason I didn't get her on, struggled to get her on the game cart is because I didn't gut her there because I thought I was going to hunt there again.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, man, I don't want coyotes sitting around here all night, and everything. So I was like, I'm going to take her back over there to my truck and then gut her over there or whatever. And so I did, and that was a beat down too. But yeah, so I don't know what the blood trail looked like on her. And then similar thing with the buck where, like, I know he didn't start bleeding for like 50 yards. And then when he started bleeding, the 10 or 15 yards that I tracked him, it wasn't a whole lot of blood, but it looked good. And the stuff on the arrow looked good. You said that when I texted you a picture of it. You were like, man, that blood looks good. It looks like there's some bubbles in it, And there was. But tracking him, there was not a whole lot of blood. And I was like, man, what is going on? When I got him out of there and gutted him, there was blood everywhere in there. I mean, he was full. And so, like, my thoughts about that are, I shot him, like I mentioned that the shot was back a little bit, I thought. But so it went in kind of high and back. He was such a steep angle that it came out like, where it came out, we were surprised that it didn't hit the heart. But it's just mainly because of the it wasn't completely broadside, but it was like in the crease. You know what I mean? It was, as Brendan Rhodes would say, in the crease. And so it was, it looked like exactly where you'd want it to come out. But the thing is, being in the crease, that deer, I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but you and I kind of came to the decision that crease was kind of just like loose skin, and it was folding over it and not letting any blood out of the low hole. And the big hole, there's got to be a lot of, or the entry hole has got to, there's got to be a lot of blood to fill up all the way to the top of the back cavity, chest cavity or whatever, pretty much. And so I don't know what it looked like because I found him before I had to blood track him. I don't know, like, if it got better or what, But, yeah. And I was just, once I found him, I would have liked to track him and see what it looked like and everything. But, man, it was just like I didn't get to bed until almost midnight that night,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And boy, did I feel good sleeping in a real bed. I rewarded myself that night. So,
yeah, you've been camping and finally got a little warmth.
That's
in
right.
a real bed. It's nice.
Yep.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if it did get a little bit better. I'd imagine he took off running pretty hard after you shot him, and then maybe where you started picking up blood is whenever he kind of had slowed down a little bit.
Well, he wasn't running super fast. It was weird.
Really?
Like, he kicked out of there pretty good, and then I looked at the footage the other day, and at 60 yards, he's not running very fast. He's just kind of in this weird gallop kind of thing. And then and then where he actually stopped was I never even made it to there on the blood trail.
Yeah.
Just because I was worried about spooking him because it was real close to the thick stuff. So it's just weird, man. As far as, shooting the broadheads and the heavy arrow, I feel like I could knock down a daggum moose with that setup. I'm telling you, it was like the doe, she was kind of up on top of this little berm. She's right on the back side of this little berm. And I shot her through both shoulders, and the arrow, I had to search for 5 minutes to find the arrow, and it was stuck in the ground through not a sagebush, some kind of similar to a sagebush, but not sagebush, but kind of has that woody, stem and everything and all the branches and stuff on it. It was gone through that bush and stuck in the dirt so hard that my first grip would not pull it out. I had to readjust my grip. So, them suckers will zip, dude, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they are sharp.
Yeah.
I cut myself twice on them, actually, because I'm not used to.
I never heard the story on that. How did you cut your hands?
Well, okay, so I guess I've never really shot fixed blades too much, and so
well, I guess they're sharp.
Well, the ones that I've seen in the past, sometimes they don't have like the back side of them. They don't have, they're not sharpened or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like where you screw the broadhead in, the back of the broadhead is just not. It's just dull or whatever. You know, it's just like a flat piece of metal. And these are sharpened all the way around on all edges. And makes sense because if the arrow starts to back out, it's still cutting, right?
Yeah.
So I like it. I just didn't realize it, and taking my arrows out of the quiver, cut myself twice. Because you're pulling it towards your left hand, or whatever.
Yeah.
And it just pops out of there and just slices your thumb in half, nearly. So it's kind of scary, man. I hadn't done it since, so I'm going to continue trying to pay attention to that and not let it happen.
You healed up pretty good. You didn't have to wear a Band-Aid this week. So
yeah, that's right.
That's good.
I was like, man, these things are it's just like a paper cut, but a little bit worse, and it's like it's not stopping bleeding. You know what I mean? So I'm like, man, what do I do about this? And I remembered I had a first aid kit I carry in my backpack, and so both times I was able to bandage it up and wear it for a day just to stop the bleeding, really. And then I did put some Neosporin on it because no need in being out there and not washing your hands for 5 days and getting something weird in your cut,
Yeah, you'd hate to lose a vital part of your archery drawing abilities.
Exactly.
You don't want to be a crossbow hunter, for the rest of your life.
No.
Oh, man. Well, that's cool, man. That's a cool story. And I guess kind of as a broader thing, and this might be another podcast altogether, but you're like, and not, I guess don't group too much of our last trip into this, but you're coming off of a pretty extended period of time on the road hunting whitetails.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what have you learned about, like, living out of your truck on this little jaunt? I know that being a musician, you've spent a lot of time living out of the truck anyways, and pretty much all hunters at some point in time live out of the truck a little bit, but, like, this is a lot of time in the truck, right? So what's kind of been one of the key things to keep in mind while doing that?
Man, I don't know if I'm like a great person to ask this question to necessarily. Just because like you said, the musician thing, I mean, I just like for the last 12 years, I've just like lived some pretty rough situations, I guess you could say, just like as far as, small house, a lot of people, van life. I mean, I've slept on, people in the music world love to say, oh yeah, I slept on my brother's couch until I made it. You know what I mean? Well, this boy right here slept on my buddy's hardwood floor in Nashville, Tennessee, and never made it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'm tougher than the next guy or whatever, but I feel like I'm pretty tough, and it just comes really from circumstance more than it comes from me just like forcing myself to be tough. You know what I mean? I've just like a little bit of uncomfort situation here and there, and adds up to where like it's like no different than last night. I slept on the floor last night. I'll just sleep on the floor again. I slept in the back seat last night. I'll just sleep in the back seat again. Or whatever. So, I mean, there are times, when I like a little luxury and I like to go buy a $60 hotel or whatever, but, it's just, and we did that in Iowa, because it was cold and there was two of us, and might as well not try to, sleep in the truck, two guys, because we did that on the elk trip, plenty of times.
Yeah.
And so that's not fun, at least in the back seat of this truck that I'm driving right now, it's, I can almost stretch out completely, so it gives me room to kind of catty corner around. But, I mean, as far as just like tips or thoughts, I guess, I mean, just, sometimes if you're not, I mean, like, I don't want to sound like a tough guy in that you have to be a tough guy to hunt. Like, my dad hates being uncomfortable. My dad would never sleep in the back of a truck. For anything, I don't think, but like, especially to go deer hunting, like, he's going to have a place to lay down and sleep in somewhat comfort, and he's going to eat some pretty good food and have some warmth, and that's fine. Like, do that. I mean, if that's what you want to do, then do it. I mean, I just personally don't have the funds to buy a hotel everywhere I go right now. Just because you and I think we've been pretty transparent about this with everybody, but like, we are giving it all we got to make this thing a lifestyle that and a career, which I hate to make it sound cheap or whatever by saying career, but I mean, you and I love to hunt and fish so much that we want to make it to where we get to hunt and fish more. You know what I mean? And that's what this whole goal is. And so we're doing whatever it takes to kind of get to that point. And if, for me, if I got to sleep in a back seat of a truck for a few days, it's not like I haven't been doing that for 10 years in the music business either. So I might as well just continue doing it. And hopefully one day I'll, be able to sleep in a tent or a hotel or whatever, which I could have slept in a tent, don't get me wrong. But I think as well as I do, sometimes dealing with all that, and especially a couple of those nights, I had to turn the heater on in the truck. I can't imagine if I was out in the tent. My sleeping bag's just not quite low enough rated for that weather, So. Oh,
yeah. That'd go, man. I mean, I know that we spent a bunch of time in tents in New Mexico, and that's all well and good because, I mean, that's pretty temperate. I know you're out hunting in the mountains or whatever, but you might get frost in the mornings, but it's not too bad. Mm-hmm. Well, if you start talking about single digits and trying to be in a tent in that, like, there's a whole nother level of precautions and things you have to think about, right? And if you don't have a truck there to get in and warm up, like, that gets real tough. So there's just to a certain point where you just got to, functionality and comfort have to come and meet in the middle spot. You know?
Oh, for sure.
One of the things that kind of stinks about doing the hotel thing, though, is that sometimes you end up pretty far from your hunting location, and it makes you have a much earlier morning. So and we've dealt with that some too.
Yeah, and that's tough for you and me. It's not that we're not morning people, but we end up probably just kind of procrastinating in the mornings sometimes and get in there late or whatever. And we hunt hard. You made that mention the other day. Like, we hunt really hard throughout the day, so sometimes it's just hard to get moving in the mornings. And so it's kind of give and take a little bit. But I mean, there's definitely there's definitely was a plus to me sleeping in my truck where, I mean, I was able to find a way to, like, get up. It's kind of tough to manage gear in the truck when you're, like, living in the truck. And there was a I don't know, I for several reasons, I ended up basically trying to get dressed in the truck and that kind of thing. And so I did, and I found a way to kind of make that system work, which was good. But being able to sleep in the truck, I was literally like 2 minutes from hopping out and hunting. You know what I mean? So I could get up in the morning, let the heater run on the truck until the truck warmed up, get out of my sleeping bag, eat a little bit of breakfast, put some clothes on, and drive over to my hunting grounds and walk in. And that's pretty nice. And I got in plenty of time. Felt like I hunted really effectively overall. And I don't know. I mean, and I don't want anybody to think that, like, people would have you believe there are so many different brands out there that I'm sure you guys listen to that are like, man, these guys are real. These are authentic guys. Like, this is the real style of hunting. And granted, it's realer than some of the stuff out there, but it ain't real because you guys listen to this podcast. A lot of you guys are getting 7 days to hunt. You know what I mean? And guys like, I mean, I feel like you and I are pretty authentic because we still have to work and stuff like that most of the year. We set it up to where we can hunt in November right now and work a lot the rest of the 10 or 11 months. But it's still like, how many of you guys that are listening to this podcast are able to go hunt Iowa for 8 days and then go hunt Texas and Kansas for another 10 and then spend some more time on public in Texas locally and then, go back to Kansas again? Like, it just doesn't happen for most guys. And so, like, don't be ashamed if, like, your week off, if you want to spend $400 on a hotel or $600 on a hotel or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, go do it. Have a good time. I've said it before, but just because I do it hard and have put myself in that situation doesn't mean that you don't work hard and in the real world so that you can enjoy some of the amenities that I don't get to. So
well, it's kind of like what we talked about the other day, where public land has become a really cool thing, and that's fine, and I think it's kind of cool too, but I hunt a lot of public land out of necessity because I'm not going to buy a deer lease because I don't have enough money. And I don't really have a lot of great permission places, at least around home. So,
and we'll talk about this next week's podcast, but this past week in Kansas, like, you hunted more private than you did public, and it's because you worked hard to get permissions. It's like you said, it's cool to shoot one on public, but it's pretty cool to get a permission and go in and hunt it and shoot one too.
Well, it's a great feeling, dude. When somebody says yes, like, that's like, I don't know what you equate. It's like whenever you're playing at skee ball at the arcade and it goes right in the middle hole, it's a good feeling. So it's like,
it is, man.
It's pretty cool. And then whenever you go to that place and you set up a trail camera or you hang a stand and you see a big buck, like, that's real cool. And that's one of the things that, I guess definitely people can access that too if they take the right steps. And that's kind of the separating line between public and private, is the fact that if you can land a good private permission, like, you might be hunting deer that you're the only guy hunting them.
Yeah.
And that's really nice too, especially if you're talking about getting back to the point of this whole little segment here, is like being real world and not having 38 days a year to go hunting or whatever. You want to maximize your time, and that's why people we know they go fill feeders in the off season and they get big bucks coming to their deer feeders because they're hardworking dudes and they only have a certain amount of time to go hunt, and it's the most effective and efficient way of making it happen. And it's the same thing with trying to get a permission piece as opposed to just hunting the public land stuff. Like, we've gotten it done on public land before and it feels good, but dadgum, man, it's nice to hunt in a place that at least there's not going to be a guy putting up a stand in the tree that you already wanted to go hunt.
Or kicking you out of his stand because he hung in your tree.
Which we'll hear more about that next week too.
That's right. Man, I don't know. I'm totally with you on that. I think it's important just to realize that we kind of all in the same boat here, and you've heard it from everybody, but like, we don't need to hate on each other just because we're not hunting public or you're not doing it sleeping in the back of the truck or whatever. Like, man, we're trying to shoot deer, we're paying for deer licenses, we care about animals, like, we're in the same boat here, we're on the same team. So
that's right, man. Well, congrats on the Texas public land buck, dude. I hope it's the first of many.
Me too, man. I'm hoping to shoot another one this year, but
I hope you shoot one this week.
I do. I'm gonna try, man, and I hope I get to video you shoot one of these days soon too.
Baby.
Because man, I just saw a deer dead, like, in the city limits, man. This is crazy. Well, I guess that kind of concludes the story, man. We're gonna have a couple of videos probably from that Texas series, that hunt, that'll release, and that'll come after the Iowa series, which will be a few videos as well. And I'm going to, now that we're going to be home for a couple of days, I'm going to really work hard to crank out the Iowa stuff and hopefully get Texas stuff to you pretty soon as well. And then Kansas, and then whatever, that is all like stuff that has been recorded. So whatever comes after that will continue on in the next several weeks. So pretty exciting stuff. Kansas we had a lot of really awesome encounters and close calls, and so we intend to close the deal on that next time we go up there, and then hopefully the next few days we'll get another Texas buck under our belt, because it is the time, like it is the week to do it, man.
It is, man. That's for sure. Well, let's get home safe and make it happen.
All right, sounds good. Well, I appreciate all you guys listening. Like I said, keep an eye on the YouTube channel to see these hunts unfold, to see all that big buck footage of that deer from Texas just eating persimmons and raking trees and all kinds of stuff, and to see what KC has been up to in Kansas and whatever else. And then we also, if you happen to be a public land hunter, we still have some orange shirts for sale online. Some of the Blaze Orange Element logo tees that are they are okay to or what's the right phrasing for this? They are acceptable to be used.
Public land legal for Blaze Orange.
That's right.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, we got those for sale. We've also got several of these big buck breakdowns still happening. We got some really cool ones lined up for you guys with some interesting stories. So keep tuning in to everything, man. It's deer season. Y'all live in it and enjoy it and eat it up while it's here, man. Because before we know it, it's going to be Christmas, and we're all going to be crying because it's a long time.
That's right, dude. If first comes Christmas and then comes the crying around January 1st, and it's like the sand is running out of your hourglass.
That's right. So it's like, thank you for all these hunting gifts for Christmas. I can't wait for 340 days until I get to use them again.
That's right.
Well, that's like my birthday. It's in January, and like I always got hunting stuff, and it's like, man, I'm gonna have to wait a whole year before I use this thing, you know? So
yeah.
Please buy me fishing gear. If you buy me a present this year, buy me fishing gear.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, appreciate you listening. God bless, and remember, this is your element.
Live in it.
The new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook Wild Game Recipes for the Grill, Smoker, Campfire, and Camp Stove is out on April 24th and is available for pre-order now. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Pre-order your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com.